AI is coming. I've heard all of these excuses, and I'm going, well, that doesn't mean don't do it. Because all of those excuses just mean we're going to keep working for poverty wages. And understand, the people who are most against the minimum wage increase are not the people paying the minimum wage. They're the people way up the food chain. They're the people who are right now paying 15, 20, even 25. Because if the minimum wage goes to 25, do you think the guy making 25 now is going to be happy? No. He's going to want higher wages. And this is what Ford's finding out. As we talked about the other day, Ford, thought, hey, 20, I think they make like 21 to start, something like that. Which, you can go work in a warehouse somewhere that's nice and warm in the winter and cool in the summer. You could go work at a gas station. Not on a factory floor. And understand that Ford job, that was the gold standard of working class employment in this country. Factory jobs had been the gold standard of the working class, middle class. Now, were they always good jobs? No, they were terrible jobs 100 years ago. They were grueling and poverty-ridden and desperate. They became union jobs. They became safer. They became higher paying. They became careers. And this is the discussion and the conversation we need to have, especially as Elon Musk is telling us, in 20 years, work's going to be optional. You won't have to go to work. And I'm like, okay, how am I going to eat? I agreed with Mayor LaGuardia, 100 years ago, or however long ago it was, when he said, you want to work, you want to eat, you got to work. And I believe that. What are we going to do? Oh, yeah, universal high income, which is a great idea on paper, by the way. I'm not 100% opposed to it, because I do believe people need to be consumers in order to have an economy that's running. You need people with money, which is why a $25 an hour minimum wage should not be something people run from. It means more people are going to have more money in their pocket. Yes, we will have some inflation, but the idea is that wages keep up faster than inflation so that you have more buying power. But if that's our future, and this universal high income is coming, why can't we have a universal basic income? Why can't we right now have that basic income that says, kids should be able to eat? Every child. We should have childcare for people. We should have health care for people. We should have the minimum. We should have a minimum standard of living now. Well, we'll talk about maximum later. I'm thrilled with the idea of potentially a maximum, but or a universal high. But we can't get the universal low. Want to hear your thoughts? Think it's possible? Do you think 20 years work will be optional? And that all of this conversation around minimum wage will be moot? I want to hear it. Rick at thericksmithshow.com. Miss any portion of the program? Grab the podcast. Wherever you get your favorite podcast, you'll find ours. And as always, thanks so much for being here. We'll see you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
AP News, I'm Marcela Sanchez. Indiana Republicans defied President Trump and rejected a plan to redraw the state's congressional districts. AP correspondent Haya Panjwani has more.
19 ayes, 31 noes. This bill has been defeated.
In a resounding rejection of a pressure campaign from President Donald Trump, Indiana Republican senators voted down a new congressional map created to give the GOP an advantage in the upcoming 2026 election. 21 senators from the Republican supermajority in the chamber's 10 Democrats voted against the map. The map would have split the city of Indianapolis into 4 districts. Democratic State Senator Fadi Kadora spoke on the Senate floor.
Any political party on earth that cannot run and win based on the merits of its ideas is unworthy of governing.
While other Republican states have moved quickly to redistrict, Indiana lawmakers like State Senator Greg Walker have been far more hesitant.
I believe the bill on its face is unconstitutional.
The GOP senators who voted against the map are likely to face primary challengers backed by Republicans on the side of President Trump. I'm Haya Panjwani.
The Senate rejected legislation to extend Affordable Care Act tax credits. The vote essentially guarantees that health care costs will rise sharply for millions of Americans after January 1st. President Trump signed an executive order aimed at blocking states from creating their own regulations for artificial intelligence. Members of Congress from both parties, as well as civil liberties and consumer rights groups, have pushed for more regulations on AI, saying there's not enough oversight for the powerful technology. But Trump told reporters in the Oval Office that
there's only going to be one winner here, and that's probably going to be the U.S. or China. And right now we're winning by a lot.
China's central government gives its companies a single place to go for government approvals. This is AP News. In Washington state, days of torrential rain have caused historic floods. Experts warn that more flooding is expected today and could be catastrophic. AP correspondent Charles de Ledesma reports European leaders are hoping they can lock up Russian assets.
The EU is expected to secure Russian finances held in Europe until it gives up its war in Ukraine and compensates Ukraine for the heavy damage that it's inflicted for almost 4 years. The move's an important step that would allow EU leaders to work out at a summit next week how to use the tens of billions of euros in Russian central bank assets to underwrite a huge loan to help Ukraine meet its financial and military needs over the next 2 years. The money was frozen under sanctions that the EU imposed on Russia over its war launched on February 24, 2022. But these sanctions must be renewed every 6 months. I'm Charles de Ledesma.
And I'm Marcela Sanchez, AP News.
This is 8:20 a.m. WCPT Willow Springs and streaming worldwide at WCPT820.com. We are Chicago's progressive talk, where facts matter. Now, your WCPT 820 weather update.
From the Weatherology Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Jennifer Wojcicki. Partial sunshine develops here for today. We'll see a high around 30 degrees. Winds out of the northwest around 5 to 10 miles per hour, gusting as high as 15. Then for tonight, a chance for some flurries with cloudy skies, a low near 8 above. Saturday, a chance for snow showers, cloudy, high 10 above. Then by Sunday, mostly sunny skies. We'll see a high around 11. Monday, partial sunshine, high of 22. That's your latest Chicago weather update. Currently, it's 21.
Save big on everything, now at Menards. When updating your home with a fresh coat of paint, be sure to use Frog Tape Advanced. It's a premium multi-surface tape with a thin, strong paper backing, allowing you to tape around contours without tearing. Get a 45-yard roll on sale for $8.99. Good through December 14th. View our entire selection of paint and accessories today on Menards.com. Plus our weekly flyer for more great deals happening now.
Season's greetings to you all from Menards.
Alexa, play WCPT.
WCPT from TuneIn.
Welcome to Choose Views with Richard Chu. Get ready to dive into a world of insightful conversations and thought-provoking discussions.
As progressives, our job is to have an all-inclusive, full-on assault with all of our players.
A show that focuses on moving our political, social, economic, gender, and cultural conversation forward.
And all of our players means all of our players.
It's Choose Views. And now, here's your host, Richard Chu.
Well, good Friday morning, progressives. Chins up and shoulders back. Welcome to the December 12th, 2025 edition of Choose Views, 773-763-9278. Find my show on Facebook Live, TuneIn Radio, and YouTube. Email me at richard@wcptama20.com and follow me on X, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, Blue Sky, Threads, Substack, and Spoutable. Catch all of our shows by subscribing to our WCPT podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. And there you can get Choose Views featured interviews. Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive. Driving it home with Patty Vasquez. And I just want to say thanks to Patty for letting me hang out with her yesterday during the first hour of her show. We had a lot of fun. Patty and I are two crazy kooks, but we had a good time. Thanks, Patty. And then, of course, It's the Democracy Stupid with Edwin Eisendrath, Out Chicago, and our other shows and interviews. Make your way over to heartlandsignal.com. Why? Because there you gain information. You have access to information, if you choose to use it, that makes you the smartest person in the room. That's one of the big reasons why you want to make your way over there. So there you go. Today's show with us will be our good friend Karen Byrne, from TruBlu Politics Podcast. Karen will be giving us a call around 6:30. Kevin Schultz, the professor over at the University of Illinois at Chicago, talking about when we had him on a couple weeks ago. He's started this new sort of research program, a research project, I should say. We're going to talk about that, and I'm excited to talk to him about that this morning. Nathan Taylor will be with us, who will be talking. He's from the Election Truth Alliance to talk about how we navigate when elections have some little funky stuff going on, and so it'll be cool to hear his take on a few things that have gone down in recent elections, and certainly going back to 2024. So there you go. We're going to be busy doing our normal Friday stuff today. We got a couple clips that Henry's put together for us that we'll get to as the show goes on. We'll try to weave them in as we go along this morning. So pay attention, because a couple of them are going to be ones you're going to want. I know you're going to want the copy of the clip so you can share it with people who you hang out with. And speaking of that, we're going to get right to it, because we've got one that you guys definitely need to hear. So check this out, progressives.
Do you agree that asylum is a lawful pathway to immigrate to this country? Yes or no?
There's an asylum program, yes, in place.
All right. So immigrants then with ongoing asylum applications are legally in this country, correct?
Excuse me, I'm sorry. Your question was?
Immigrants with ongoing asylum applications are legally in this country.
There are individuals in this country that have applications that...
And they are legally here because it's a lawful pathway, right?
It's a lawful pathway.
Okay, so if your department then deports anyone with an ongoing asylum application, you are violating the law, correct?
Joe Biden left us with...
I'm not asking about Joe Biden. I'm asking you a specific question. If your department deports anyone with an ongoing asylum application, you are violating the law. Is that correct?
It was greatly violated when they allowed...
I'm asking you.
People to come
I'm asking you.
Asylum applications.
Why are you filibustering? Why can't you answer the question? It's a simple question.
Your president...
If your department
your secretary
deports anyone with an ongoing asylum application, you are violating the law. Isn't that correct?
The asylum program was broken under the last...
Mr. Chairman, I will reclaim my time. She's not answering the question.
Okay, that was Representative Dan Goldman. And the creature in the background that was filibustering is Kristi Noem. Henry and I had some fun with this. I can't put this on Henry. It's on me. I referred to her as Kristi Cakes. And Henry almost snorted. Well, he did snort a little bit. He's like, Kristi Cakes, dude, come on. Kristi Cakes couldn't answer the question. Not couldn't. She wouldn't answer the question. She could easily. The answer's right in front of us. Okay. And so I've got 1,000 thoughts about this, but I'll keep it as simple as I can, because we have another clip that we're going to get to from another representative. And then we got more. Listen, that's how you deal with these punks. And I'm sorry if anybody's offended, but I'm not really sorry, but grow up. That's how we've been saying we want Democrats to fight and stand up. That's how you do it. It wasn't performative. Representative Goldman, and I was blessed and the honor to meet and interview him during the convention last summer, or in 2024 during the convention. He did his job in asking the questions and then letting her know, you're not going to filibuster me or us or this committee. And that's what has to happen. Keep exposing them when you have the moment, whether you're on the one of the corporate media outlets, on a podcast, in the halls of Congress, or in a committee here, wherever. This is what has to happen. Their carnage, their law breaking, has to be exposed every single time, and that's the part for me that I appreciated about how he continuously, consistently went after her. More of that, Democratic House of Representative members, more of that, Democratic senators on a federal level, on a state level, when you have the opportunity to grill, when you have an opportunity to speak the truth, do it. And ask the tough questions, do it. And put them on the hot spot, do it. Kudos to our brothers and sisters in Indiana. We talked last night, Patty and I had a chance to talk with Representative Pierce from the 61st District in Indiana, State District, which is kind of the Bloomington area. Yeah, they got it done in Indiana. Why? Because they spoke truth and the voters said no. This is not right. It's not even about being fair. It's not even right. So that's what our leaders have to do on all levels. They have to call it out as best they can real time. I'm going to raise my bar in terms of, doing it a better job of that. So that's one clip that we have for you in terms of a representative getting after the BS coming from the administration. We have another one from Representative Benny Thompson, who made it clear that you can't walk in here and tell lies. Let's hit them with that.
Executive Board of Domestic Terrorist Organization, Antifa. That's our primary concern right now.
All right, that's what President Trump did. What did the FBI say?
We share the same view. When you look at the data right now, you look at the domestic terrorist threat that we're facing. Right now, what I see from my position is that's the most immediate violent threat that we're facing on the domestic side.
So where is Antifa headquartered?
What we're doing right now with the organization.
Where in the United States does Antifa exist? Yeah. If it's a terrorist organization and you've identified it as number one.
We are building out the infrastructure right now.
So what does that mean? We're trying to get the information. You say Antifa is a terrorist organization. Tell us as a committee, how did you come to that? Where do they exist? How many members do they have in the United States as of right now?
Well, that's very fluid. It's ongoing for us to understand that. The same, no different than Al Qaeda and ISIS.
No, I don't want you. I'll ask one question, sir. I just want you to tell us. If you said Antifa is the number one domestic terrorist organization operating in the United States, I just need to know where they are, how many people. I don't want a name. I don't want anything like that. Just how many people have you identified with the FBI that Antifa is made of?
Well, the investigations are active.
So you wouldn't come to this committee and say something you can't prove. I know you wouldn't do that. But you did.
That was a representative from the great, good old state of Mississippi bringing some good old country wisdom. Benny Thompson, basically don't come in here telling these lies. And, Representative Thompson is probably a very imposing man physically. He's a big dude, and he is not to be to be messed with. And he, this FBI representative and agent tried to come in there and do that and lie. That's two. Let's hit him with the third one, Henry.
I want to be very clear. You have misused resources appropriated by Congress. You've engaged in unethical behavior. You have repeatedly made false and misleading statements to Congress and to the press, and you've undermined the separation of powers and disregarded the role of Congress and the courts. Bottom line, you lie with impunity. You reject checks and balances, and you ignore Congress and the courts. Your options are limited. Either you're going to resign, Trump's going to fire you, or you will be impeached. I've already called for your resignation. You may remember I hand-delivered my request to you back in May, and I urge you to reconsider resignation because I've taken the first step towards your impeachment, and I've called on the Judiciary Committee to open an investigation into your lawlessness. Mr. Chairman, I know that at the end we'll be entering a number of articles into consent, but since I have a few moments, I ask unanimous consent to enter into the record a letter calling the Judiciary Committee to investigate Secretary Noem's impeachable offenses. Whatever you choose, the American people will have justice, Secretary, and you will be held accountable. I'm going to make sure of that every single day. With that, Mr. Chair, I yield back.
That was Representative Delia Ramirez. And listen, y'all, this is how we want our Democratic leaders to work. Representative Goldman, Representative Thompson, and Representative Ramirez. New York, Mississippi, and Illinois, specifically Chicago. That's how you bring the heat to these fools right now, guys. It has to be that way. And we want to encourage our leaders to do that. Call your leaders and say, we want more of that. Do not, I said this almost a year ago, earlier in the year, when we were talking with Representative Nikki Buzinski. I said, listen, Representative, we got your back. Just go get them. Go get them. We got you. Don't worry about this primary garbage and all this other. Go get them. And those 3 clips are ones that I am going to be very pleased to have in my little, book of clips, because that's what we want to see them do. More of that Democratic representatives in the House of Representatives. More of that. Let's take a quick break, Henry. Thanks for hooking us up. You're listening to Choose Views on WCPT AM 820 in Chicago, WARR 1520 AM and 103.5 FM from Warren County, North Carolina. I am Richard Chu. We'll be right back. Hey, progressives, it's Richard Chu, host of Choose Views weekdays 6 to 8 a.m. Central. We're all anxious for the 2026 midterm election to arrive so we can restore some sanity and much-needed oversight to our government. In fact, it's the most important midterm election in American history, and Choose Views will be in the thick of it, bringing you candidate interviews on a regular basis. I'll be talking to Democratic Party hopefuls running for House and Senate at the federal and state level, as well as candidates for governor and other state and local offices.
I am in love with our ability to fight for our rights, to fight for our future, to fight for our freedoms, to fight as our ancestors fought. It's just our moment. This is just our time to stand up and to speak up. We can't give up on this.
If you miss any of the interviews live, you'll be able to find them all on WCPT's candidate interviews page at heartlandsignal.com/candidates. That's Choose Views weekdays from 6 to 8 a.m. on WCPT, Chicago's progressive talk for 20 years.
Alexa, play WCPT.
WCPT from TuneIn.
This is Choose Views with Richard Chu.
Hey, guys, welcome back to the show, and thanks for being with us. 773-763-9278. Henry will open up the lines. We try to squeeze calls in. We're busy today with Karen and with Professor Schultz and with Nathan, but we'll see what we can do. And again, thanks to you guys this week. Listen, with me being out and having Michelle Peltier in on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, it was a blessing to have that kind of partnership and team support here at CPT. So thanks to our management here. Thanks to our engineers, most definitely, Devin and Henry, as always. Maddie B, I know, was around the place, and Lady B as well. Paul and everybody else. And thanks to Michelle, because we as a team here are getting it done. So I'm grateful to that. And I just want to make sure that I let everybody know. All right, Henry, let's hit him with a couple of quick Choose Views news items on this December 12th, 2025. Jobless claims rise the most since 2020. Initial jobless claims last week rose by the most since March of 2020 and the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic. Americans filed a total of 236,000 applications for unemployment benefits, an increase of 44,000 over the week before, according to the Labor Department's Thursday release. Analysts had expected that figure to come in around 220,000. The agency also revised the previous week's total up by 1,000 to 192,000. The Fed's Powell is seeing a vast overstatement in the U.S. job numbers. Okay, so in parallel to what I just reported, a divided Fed prioritized the flagging job market while cutting rates, as we know, on Wednesday. Jerome Powell, chair, explaining one of his concerns: government data has been overstated regarding recent hiring. Powell told reporters that Fed researchers believed official numbers could be off by 60,000 jobs a month. 60,000, y'all, which would swing monthly gains since April from a reported 40,000 plus to a minus 20,000. That overstatement has its impact. Sorry about the paper ruffling. Indefinite barista strike at Starbucks is continuing to grow. The ongoing barista strike at Starbucks is approaching its first month mark, and it kept expanding yesterday. Starbucks Workers United says 3,800 baristas across 180 stores in 130 cities are now lobbying for better pay and benefits. At the start of December, 120 stores in 85 cities were involved. Despite the walkout and growing support for it, Starbucks reports virtually no disruption to store operations. Okay, well, stay tuned on that. The company says it's investing $500 million to address staffing issues, but 4 years after striking workers' first a union win, they still have no contract. That's absolutely unacceptable, Starbucks. It just is. Those folks work their behinds off. Standing on their feet that long during the day in a tight space, navigating around people with hot stuff in your hands. Listen, pay those people. That's part of the problem. These companies play this game where we got to figure, I'll just pay them. You know how to do it. It's not that complicated. Just pay them. You know, better negotiations with your vendors to reduce the pricing on the things that you pay for the stores, so that two things happen. You have more capital to go toward the people that work at the stores. Two, the consumer pays less for those items. Do a better job of negotiating with your vendors. That's how you make that happen. And then for companies who want to kiss Donald Trump's ring, push back on the tariffs so that you have more capital to invest in your people. Golly. I run the world, Henry, man. All right, last but not least, YouTube TV bets on skinnier bundles that cost less. If you're a YouTube person, you will they've debuted a smaller genre-based channel bundles programming for next year as the Google-owned company tries to lure new customers in an increasingly cutthroat pay TV market. Until now, YouTube's TV's only package included over 100 channels for $82.99 per month. The new bundles will cost less, the company says. Those specific prices have not yet been disclosed, so pay attention to that. By the way, guys, if you do want the clips, I've already had a couple requests. If you want the clips that we just played, Benny Thompson, Dan Goldman, and Delia Ramirez, Congress folks, I will get them to you. Just send me an email at richard@WCPT820.com. But if you're hanging out this weekend in and around the city of Chicago, here are some things to do. Keep you busy. We've got the Windy City Laughs at the Comedy Bar, 162 East Superior, starting yesterday, so you guys can check that out if you want to get out for a few laughs. Peace Concert started as well at the Fourth Presbyterian Church. Let's see. Amir K at the Comedy Bar. That's taking place also starting tonight at 162 East Superior. Santa's Secret Pioneer Court starting today, 401 North Michigan Avenue, in the big old plaza that's there at 401 North Michigan, just across the river. And then we've got this Friday noonday concert at Fourth Church, Michigan Avenue and Delaware Place. We're going to be hanging out in that area. The Winter Wonderfest, 600 East Grand Avenue, is another favorite that takes place this year during the holiday season. What else can you do? The Holiday Fireworks Dinner Cruises starting tomorrow, December 13th, 2025. 455 Cityfront Plaza is another location you can go for some great things to do to hang out. A few things. Do what you got to do. Have the fun you want to have, but just a couple of things you can do here and around the city of Chicago if you're going to be in the city. And I always say to everybody, if you don't have anything specific you're going to do, just get out of the house as best you can and make your way someplace else and different than you normally go. It's always fun. I know sometimes we can get stuck in the mode of doing what we're doing. That's one of those things that I always am a big advocate of, is get out and do some stuff. All right, let's see what some of the text messages are saying this morning. Let's see who's trying to throttle me this morning. Okay. All right, I get it. Someone's saying that the Representative Thompson screwed up, that the position is not to take that there is no Antifa organization, but that Antifa is a pro-democracy perspective. I get that. I understand what you're saying. And if I'm going to, his goal wasn't there. His objective or responsibility to the person that sent this text, 708. His responsibility wasn't to defend Antifa. So let's be clear. His responsibility was to get to the truth about what the FBI representative was saying sitting next to Kristi Noem. I know where you're coming from. Democracy, Antifa, right. We understand that. But he wasn't wrong in his approach because the guy lied in saying that they were the biggest, Antifa was the largest threat, domestic threat to the United States, domestic terror threat, and about the fact that, when he was asked the question about, well, where are they? He was trying to get to the point that Antifa, that too many people in the Trump administration, if you listen to it again, he said that's what Trump says right out of the gate. His first response was that. So I understand what you're talking about. Defend folks who are against fascism, okay? And I think that listen, I don't know what was in his brain, but we can sit back all day long and say he could have done this, he could have done that. And you can criticize me all day long for the order in which I say it or respond to it. I'm just saying that his position was to call out the fact that the FBI agent had not told the truth. Okay? His job wasn't to defend Antifa per se in that moment. You may disagree, and if you do, I respect that. I'm not going to try to defend the splicing of words or is someone saying me being sloppy with rhetorical sloppiness on my part. Okay, I get it. I have to respect that that's where you stand. I'm saying that we need more Democrats that are willing to push back when it comes to people telling lies in front of at a U.S. representative's hearing. We can debate the order of all that, but we keep asking our representatives to push back and fight. And when they do, now we're going to split. This is that purity thing again, right? This is where we get into trouble, y'all. You may not like me saying it, but don't text me if you don't expect me to come back and say that, we ask for the strength, and then when someone shows it and does their job, then we got to criticize the way in which they put their sneakers on. Let's not do that again. Please, y'all, let's not do that. So if you're true to being a supporter of what we're trying to get done, then look at it that way as well. And let's not get stuck on that purity test stuff. Please understand what Thompson was doing was to call out the lie about finding this organization. What Goldman was doing was calling out the lie that Kristi Noem is perpetrating. And what Delia Ramirez was doing is calling out the BS. Focus on that. You want to focus on the other stuff, I would say you could better use your time rather than trying to splice and dice the purity of how language is used and how exactly specific it is. All right. Let's talk about money for a second. I read yesterday that we spent already over $1 billion, Henry, on this situation with Venezuela, the boat, all that we spent $1 billion already. Y'all understand that? With the B, billion. So let's put some simple math. I did this yesterday because I wanted to make this point. $1 billion. Cities in America are struggling, according to all the data that's out there. And the president's talking about blue cities, Democrat-run cities, cities with a black mayor or a brown-skinned mayor or a woman mayor got problems. So here's the simple math. If we took $1 billion, and this is why I say that our defense budget is bloated and way out of alignment, and I said this before, versions of it before. So let's take the $1 billion, Henry, and divide it by the top 20 cities, red or blue, in the country. That's $50 million. Y'all hear me? That's $50 million that can go to those cities to use at their discretion to improve their cities, whether it be education, whether it be food for those who are food insecure, whether it be housing assistance. Just talk those top three. But we're going to spend $1 billion going after some folks who are not a threat based on all the smart people in the room, other than the knuckleheads that are on the Republican side. $50 million. Well, imagine what that would do to the top 20 cities in the country. I'm not just using top 20. You could say the middle 20. You could say the last 20. I don't know. But imagine the impact that would have on those cities and their ability to improve. But we got these knuckleheads in Washington, specifically the GOP, that are going to spend $1 billion to go after somebody, to create a war situation so that they can say we're going to go after the oil and snatch a tanker. All right, guys, it's Friday, so you can see I'm a little fired up. 773-763-9278. You're listening to Choose Views on WCPT AM 820 in Chicago, WARR 1520 AM and 103.5 FM from Warren County, North Carolina. I'm Richard Chu. We'll be right back.
Driving it home with Patty Vasquez.
Hold on a second. I'm going to take this on the air. Hey, Steve Lessman, this is Patty Vasquez. We're live on the air. Are you really calling me? This is the sales department calling me live on the air? Hey, Steve. Steve, you're on the air.
Did they make it?
You've done that to me. You could know Art from WCPT.
Why are they calling you?
I have no idea. He just saw me in the hallway. Come on now.
Patty Vasquez. Weeknights 5 to 7 on WCPT 820.
You're listening to WCPT 820. Here's the latest Chicago weather update.
From the Weatherology Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Jennifer Wojcicki. Partial sunshine develops here for today. We'll see a high around 30 degrees. Winds out of the northwest around 5 to 10 miles per hour, gusting as high as 15. Then for tonight, a chance for some flurries with cloudy skies, a low near 8 above. Saturday, a chance for snow showers, cloudy, high 10 above. Then by Sunday, mostly sunny skies. We'll see a high around 11. Monday, partial sunshine, high of 22. That's your latest Chicago weather update. Currently, it's 21.
Chicago's Progressive Talk, WCPT 820, where facts matter.
From the headlines to the heart of the city, Richard Chu breaks it all down. You're back on Choose Views.
Hey, guys, welcome back to the show. Listen, if you want the clips from earlier, Representative Thompson, Goldman, and Ramirez, just send me an email, richard@WCPT820.com, and I will get them to you so that you can have them in your arsenal. But let's not waste any more time on people that say that I'm doing a poor job of how I'm assessing Benny Thompson. Let's go to our good friend, Karen Byrne from TruBlu Politics Podcast. Good morning.
Good morning. You're doing a fine job of
I suck at this, Karen, in terms of playing a clip about a representative who is trying to prove. Okay, I'll do my best to get off of that.
No, he understood, to your point, he understood the assignment he was just speaking to. I mean, we have to remember that they are given just limited amounts of time to get their point across. And the point in the moment, I get what the listener who sent it is saying, and yes, we should always be pointing out, where we can, that Antifa is a movement that stands for anti-fascism,
right.
So,
and you've said that a bunch of times. I mean, I've heard you say that in many different venues, but anyhow, sorry.
No. But, but he understood the assignment in that moment. It was to discredit the fact that they had identified them as a terror organization when they cannot name where the headquarters is. They have no information. They're just pulling things out of their where's. So yeah, he did exactly. He understood the assignment in the moment and spoke to it. I thought the Democrats were on fire yesterday. I thought they did an amazing job of just completely tearing them. They did not let Kristi Noem get away with anything, and she had to skedaddle too. By the way,
it was like that. Remember in the Flintstones when yeah, right. The fast moving feet.
Yeah, she was, and she got heckled. I don't know if you heard.
Yeah.
Somebody. Oh my God, it was great. And I mean, she's like, oh yeah, I got to go see about a thing. I got to go wash my hamster. I got a meeting, and then
there might be some puppies out there that I've got to go.
Yeah, there might be. There's something.
Vent my anger
do you
on.
smell that? Does anybody else smell that? Is something burning?
Yeah, her, as my father used to say, her hind part was burning. So
your credibility is burning, baby.
But Karen, listen, they got after those folks yesterday. And I understand that, maybe people might want things to have been said or done in a different way. I get that. But they all understood the assignment. They all said, not today. You're not going to roll up in here and tell these lies. We're going to box you in so that you're either going to admit that you were wrong, or by not answering the questions, it's going to show how incompetent you are. And in either way, we won in that moment. We won because something, I don't know what it is that's happened, but I do know that for those who want to criticize the Democrats, listen, we can do that all day long. I'm not going to take that train. I'm going to find ways to give them as much of my energy and positivity as I can to do more of that. But something has happened, Karen, and I want your take on this, because it seems as though pretty much every time a Democrat is speaking now, and it's not a very high bar, but they are bringing some heat a lot. And it's we've had our ones that we would call our favorites, our regulars, in terms of Swalwell and Crockett and a few others, but some other people are starting to step up and say.
Dan Goldman,
he was one of the three yesterday.
He was one of them. Yes, yep, sure was.
So what do you think has happened? What do you think has happened, Karen?
I think that they and it's been obviously slower than we would like for them to have arrived at the fact that the Republican Party is not a serious party. I would argue that it has not been a serious party. They are not there to serve. They are there when they talk about wanting small government or no government and doing away with regulations. This has been their thing all along. And I think that the Democrats, because, they and it's understandable, when you work with people day in and day out and you see them in the hallways and you want to see the good in them. You don't want to believe, that they are not good people. It's just we have differing opinions on policy. But the thing of it is that their policies, the policies that they want to enact and have always wanted to enact, are designed to hurt people, to not help people, to not get people what they need in the moment, which is exactly why they are there. So they've always kind of been there to undermine. And I think the failure for the Democratic Party to recognize that these are not honest brokers that have the good intentions that they have to actually show up and serve their constituents and serve the people and not the millionaires, billionaires, and the multinational corporations. We can say that, there are a few Democrats that take money from, special interests or this group or that group. Then we need to talk about, campaign finance reform. We need to get money out of politics. We need to do something about Citizens United. That's a fair conversation to be had. But I think that, to answer your question, they're finally waking up to the fact that their Republican, what's the word I'm looking for? Their contemporaries over on the counterparts, thank you, that they are not honest brokers, and that just watching them refuse to roll up their sleeves and join them in stopping the housing market crash in 2010 and the, our economy crashing and, just where your goal is to make somebody that you don't like because of the color of their skin a one-term president and obstruct everything when people are actually hurting. I think that that was kind of the starting point where they started recognizing that they are not there to serve the people and do what is required for the people, that they are self-serving. And then I think January 6th had a big part. When your life is threatened and you watch that kind of a violent assault, and by the way, we can name the leaders of the Proud Boys, that's Enrique Tarrio. We can name the leader of the Oath Keepers, that's Ben Rhodes. There is no leader up to to the point of, Benny, there is no leader of Antifa.
Right. Where's their office? And
We're
so,
all Antifa. My great uncle Stan was a member of Antifa. He died at the Battle of the Bulge in World War II.
What would have been interesting and cool, and we can always play 11th, whatever quarterback. It would have been cool if he could have said, well, representative from the FBI, I'm a member of Antifa. Should I be kicked out of the country? I mean, yeah, we can always go back and say we can reposition the wording, and I get all that. But for me, and I think for many of us, what we have to be willing to do is go, box check, we got that one, let's go to the next. Box check, momentum, energy,
Again,
passion.
they have limited time. They
do.
Right.
And that's part of what happens sometimes is that, Chrissy Nome tried to filibuster Dan Goldman, and he's like, nah, that ain't happening today.
Not today.
Delia Ramirez made it really clear. She tried to, the smirk on her face, and she called her out on that. That's what I think so many people, and hopefully that 89 million that didn't participate, Karen, in the last national election, look at that and say, okay, that's going to get me off the couch and out. I'm hoping. I have to be willing to be hopeful of that, because if people are being honest and saying the Democrats didn't give me something to vote for, I didn't feel any energy from them. I didn't feel like they were fighting. Well, now you don't have that excuse, because we're starting to see more and more of that. So I don't want to hear this excuse, well, they're not quite right here. They didn't quite say this the right way over there. Meanwhile,
the beauty.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Right. Well, I'm just going to say the beauty of it is that they are creating viral moments. They are creating shareable clips that we all can share, because in the absence of a mainstream media that is actually rising to the level that we need them to rise to, and stopping with the both sides narrative, the reason that people check out of politics is largely because of the both sides narrative, because they look at our government and they look at politicians as all, cut out of the same, coming out of the same mold, when that is not the truth, and the mainstream media has been failing us for a very long time. So this is another part of why it's so important for the Democrats, and what we saw, Benny Johnson. That's a shareable piece of video that all of us can do, to sit down with our people that we know, with, whether it's our Republican voting, and I'm not saying full on MAGA. I don't think that we can, we should waste our time trying to appeal to them, but certainly with people that, to your point, have not been engaging in our democracy by voting and paying attention and knowing who the players are, who's doing what.
If somebody,
this is why it's so important to have those moments to be able to share, so we can do the work that the media is not doing.
If somebody says I'm not going to get involved, I'm not going to participate because Benny Thompson didn't defend Antifa, then that person's mindset is not to participate anyhow. They're looking for a reason to not be involved. Henry is profusely nodding on that. We have to be willing to say, okay, that was an opportunity. To your point, Karen, what you made me think of when you said that about clips and moments. Part of the reason that I do this is something that I go back to. Pat Riley, when he was the coach of the Los Angeles Lakers in the early 80s, shortly after Magic Johnson got drafted and he was always big. He's one of the first NBA coaches to use video as a tool for training. And remember, Henry, I mean, you watched the clips over the years. Pat Riley, Henry's not old enough to watch it real time, but he knows what I'm talking about. He used video. He used video to inspire the players. And he used those moments to inspire the guys on the Lakers for their next battle. And I think that right now we have to be willing to do more of that, is to say, all right, we have to take everything that's on the table and use it. And if we if we don't say something perfect, I don't need perfect right now. I need people to step up and fight when they have the opportunity. And to that point, in the limited amount of time that they all had, they were able to deliver a strong blow to what's happening from the administration. And I think that's what we kind of have to take away from these conversations and these clips and these moments. To your point, Karen, the corporate media, I'm not even calling it mainstream anymore. I'm going to call it corporate media as best I can remember to do it. The corporate media is not doing the job that needs to be done in reporting what's actually happening. So we get to take the opportunity when there are these clips and there are these viral moments and speak loudly to them. So I'm not trying to be perfect or right or 100% right. I'm just trying to continue to push our conversation to the front of the room, ours being that progressive liberal Democrats. So.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And,
Hey.
I do get it. It is a frustration, the fact that they're weaponizing that term against us. It's nonsensical. But anyway.
Yeah. So a couple quick questions that I want to ask you about a few things that are happening out there. And by the way, folks, you're listening to Choose Views on WCPT AM 820 in Chicago, WARR 1520 AM and 103.5 FM from Warren County, North Carolina. I'm Richard Chu. We're talking to our good friend, Karen Byrne from TruBlu Politics podcast. Karen, so let me ask you a question that we could talk about probably for hours. You've said this for a while, as many of us have, that our media, isn't doing their job, and our communication outlets aren't doing their job. And now we see, and I've been talking about this for a few weeks now. I said a while back that this Paramount deal was going to be bad news. This Paramount Skydance deal is going to be bad news. And now here we have the Ellison boys once again taking the path that I thought would happen, which is now a hostile takeover of Disney because they didn't like that they didn't get what they wanted. But we know now that Trump and Jared are more behind this deal than people wanted to talk about. And it's interesting that the corporate media is not talking about the fact that these guys are trying to cut your knees out, and CNN is the next one on the chopping block that Ellison's want to take over to do what? Stunt our voices. What do you say,
That's
man?
right. Well, let's see. CNN is available in over 321 million homes around the world and has hundreds of millions of monthly viewers. And, so yes, it is a very alarming. And I mean, I've had my issues with CNN for a long time because, for the same reason that I've had my issues with other, legacy media outlets because they play this both sides narrative. They have not pushed Republicans enough. However, it's a large reach, and that is where a lot of Americans get their information. They are a widely, globally recognized network, and so the danger is that now what they want to also do, they want to make that international, make it so that they can have a global propaganda machine, so that they can control the information that people are getting, including, and do what they're already doing to the various reporting agencies, so the jobs reports, all of the data that we are supposed to be getting as American consumers are available to us. They are not putting that information out there, and now they're going to have this network of right-wing owned propaganda machines, and then they're going to take their act globally to falsify the numbers and basically spread American propaganda all over the world.
Yeah,
and it's dangerous.
It's super dangerous. It's going to squash our ability to have the comments that we need to. I mean, CNN's already been questionable for a while, and now this additional attempt to have more consolidation is just another example of what we've been saying. We didn't try to say it. We didn't try to tell you. We've been saying that this is going to happen. And here we are. CNN is the reality in my mind about all of this is that that's why I've been using corporate media rather than mainstream media, because I think now that those of us who have independent radio shows, podcasts, and all the like, we are part of the mainstream, certainly conversation. Corporate media is what we're really dealing with. The CNNs of the world, and to some, depending on the show that's being broadcast, MSN or MS News, it can slide into some corporatism in their presentation, depending on who the host is. And certainly the others, the Newsmaxes and all the others, that's corporate media because it's funded by corporation dollars who spend money on advertising for those shows that are broadcast on those. So I think corporate media is what we have to kind of shift to as best we can. And this is going to be the ultimate corporate media situation if they're able to pull this off, which would be tragic.
And that is, and you know what, that is a very important, differentiation to make. And I think you're right. We are having the mainstream conversations, WCPT. We have, a lot of YouTube channels now. We have I've Had It. We have Midas Touch Network. We have Joy Reid. I mean, she's doing amazing work. We have Don Lemon, and so I think that what it's showing is that, we the people, we have a choice. We do have a choice. We don't have to sit and take the status quo when it comes to these billionaires buying up our media. We don't have to do that. We can go and we can get the information that we need. And this is a pivotal moment. And, the information that people get form what their opinions about X, Y, and Z are. We've seen that in polling numbers. So when we say, why is it that, people aren't seeing the same things that we're seeing? And the polling numbers don't seem right. Well, it's the information that people are getting is how they're going to form their view and their views about what is actually happening, and then also how they feel about things. And so the fact that we have this opportunity to have all these amazing independent voices, WCPT, Free Speech TV, to get out there and get the truth to the people, that, again, that informs us, and we are a part of the conversation then, and we can be the people that bring factual information to our circles, because people are feeling it right now. And so this is a moment. I have more and more people bringing up politics now than I've ever had.
Did I tell you about
before.
I told you that my wife Ann and I got together for lunch with some friends of hers that were in town, and we talked about politics like we've never talked about politics as long as I've known them. And same thing happened at Thanksgiving dinner. It was a third of the conversation. It wasn't the normal, just sort of, the easy stuff, because everybody realizes what I've been saying for decades, honestly. I've been saying this for 3 decades easily. This whole, we can't talk about politics, religion, sex, and money is one of the least smart things that we can do. And what happened is those on the right been talking about it, Karen, and that's how we get a Project 2025 and how we get all these other programs, because they're talking about it. They've been talking about it.
Yes, they are.
And so now, we're at a point where we know we got to talk about it, and we have to be the mainstream media. So let me ask you one other thing before we wrap up today. And I know we need more time, but I want to get your quick hit on this. Representative Crockett has decided to get into the Senate race in Texas, and so it's Jasmine and James Tallarico and Representative Crockett. What are your thoughts on what you've seen and heard? And you know what I'm talking about, or what I'm not saying. I'll let you say it. Since this black woman has gotten into the race.
Well, first of all, what an amazing dilemma for the Texas voters to have 2 amazing Democrats to choose from in the primaries. And remember, it's the primaries. The person who is most likely to be able to beat whomever it is, John Cornyn or Ken Paxton, are going to win the Democratic primary. Now, that's if there's no effery going on, or whatever. But no, I mean, I think that we can say that, the people of Texas have a choice to make. And I think of the 2, they are both amazing people to be sending to Washington on behalf of the Texas voters. what I'm hearing, from, as you know, my co-host Anita works or lives and works in Texas and in San Antonio. And she, her concern is, I think, what a lot of our concerns are with having had Hillary and Kamala both treated unfairly and potentially had, their stuff stolen from them. The misogyny in this country and in Texas is large. They overturned Roe. They're very misogynistic down there. There's a large Latino base down there that are pretty misogynistic. There's a large, white, good old boy base down there that are evangelical base that are, would not vote for a woman, period. Now you bring in the issue of race, and we all know that is going to play a part in it, in her electability.
Yeah.
Statewide, from her district, I think it's obviously a no-brainer. In the state of Texas, it's a heavier lift. It shouldn't be, but if we're being honest,
it shouldn't be. They're both.
It's going to be a heavier lift.
I think that, and if anything is going to show here, it's going to show that we do have two great qualified candidates running for this seat. Both of them, I'll take in a heartbeat, her or him, because we want that seat. I'm going to start there. I'm going to be non-gender, non-racial, non-whatever. We want the seat. We want the number. Okay, I'm going to be hardcore on that. Now, when we get into the subtext conversation about what's going to probably happen, is what you just described, is we can't run from that and say that's not a reality. The reality is, because she is a black woman in America and specifically in Texas, she's going to catch hell. She's going to catch hell. And it's already happening, where people are saying, we know what's out there. We're not going to repeat some of it. On the other hand, Tallarico has done what a good person would do, and that's to say, hey, y'all, back off of talking about her and trash talking her.
That's right.
Because that's what he should do. So I'm not going to be the one that is going to say she's better than him or he's better than her. They both are very, very good in their own right. And that's what we need. This is that moment where, even as a black man, I'm going to say this, whoever wins. We want the seat, because the seat is what's going to allow us to change the larger conversation in the country. So for folks out there who say that I'm not supporting a black woman, that's a damn lie. I'm supporting the black woman, and I'm supporting the white dude in this case, because we want to win the seat. Who do I think is a better candidate? I don't really know. I could see strengths of hers and his. And in terms of who's a fighter, I would say right now, she might be leading a little bit in that case. But he hasn't punked out either. So, and
he has, he can speak to the evangelical base. And again, I think that, right now, Latinos, they've lost support by, I think Trump is underwater 25% with the Latino base in Texas right now. So, I think that, and again, the voters are going to decide. But I do think that, again, this is a pivotal moment, because ranchers are feeling it. Farmers in Texas are feeling it. The Latino base is feeling it with the horrible, ICE terrorists running around in the mass deportations. So there is an opportunity to definitely pick up some voters. And so, again, the less heavy lift would be a man. Unfortunately, that is the world that we live in. It is absolutely infuriating and depressing, if I let it be, that is the situation. But but we have to deal with what is. And it's unfortunate that even has to enter into the calculation. But again, I think that the voters of Texas are going to pick the person that they feel is most able, not necessarily qualified, but most able. Because I would say Jasmine Crockett, hands down. She is just, we've seen her. Yeah. She is just as Kamala was exponentially more qualified to run than any of her male counterparts.
The debate that she's going to have with, and both of them, the debate that they're going to have, particularly her, when it comes to Cornyn, will be very interesting. And so we have to stay tuned on this one, and we have to we have to win. We have to win, y'all. Karen, we got to take a break. You know that.
We got to go.
We got to go.
I know.
All right, Karen Byrne,
go.
TruBlu Politics Podcast. Have a great weekend. Thanks for rolling with us this morning. We will talk to you next week.
You too. Love y'all.
All right,
Mwah,
bye-bye.
mwah.
Quick break, guys. 773-763-9278. You're listening to Choose Views on WCPT AM 820 in Chicago and WARR from Warren County, North Carolina. I'm Richard Chu. We'll be right back.
Individuals and businesses with tax problems, listen carefully. If you owe over $10,000 in back taxes or have unfiled tax returns, U.S. Tax Shield can help you take back control. The IRS can seize your bank accounts, garnish your paycheck, close your business, and file criminal charges. Our team of tax attorneys can stop collections and get you protected. U.S. Tax Shield offers a price protection guaranteed quote to get you protected today. U.S. Tax Shield is A+ rated with the BBB, so call 800-466-9625. U.S. Tax Shield, 800-466-9625.
While retinitis pigmentosa takes Mark's vision, his family gives him hope, whether at the family business or at home with his wife and sons. He knows he's not fighting alone. For 50 years, the Foundation Fighting Blindness has funded research into treatments and cures for blinding retinal diseases, providing hope to people with vision loss. And for Mark, winning the fight means being there for his family. The Foundation Fighting Blindness. Together, we're winning. Help us end blinding diseases at fightingblindness.org.
Are you looking to hire? ZipRecruiter finds the best candidate for your job fast. Try ZipRecruiter for free at ZipRecruiter.com/free. That's ZipRecruiter.com/free.
AP News, I'm Marcela Sanchez. Ukraine's Volodymyr Zelensky says negotiators are wrestling with territorial issues in U.S.-led talks to end Russia's war in his country. AP correspondent Sagar Magani has more.
We believe this document should be approved by the United States Congress. This would mean real, solid, legally binding security guarantees for our country.
Zelensky revealed details of the talks before heading into an urgent meeting with European allies who back his efforts to reach fair terms in any settlement.
We are ready to work with President Trump in any format.
But here in Washington,
it's a little bit complicated because you're cutting up land in a certain way. It's not the easiest thing. It's sort of like a complex real estate deal times 1,000, right? But it's a deal that would have stopped the killing of thousands of lives.
The U.S. could send a representative to more talks this weekend if it sees a real chance of signing a peace deal.
We don't want to waste a lot of time. We think it's negative. We want it to get settled.
Sagar Meghani, Washington.
The Trump administration is expanding its crackdown on diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI, by ordering national parks to remove items from their gift shops that it deems objectionable. Measles outbreaks are growing along the Utah-Arizona border and in South Carolina. In 2 months, 111 people have fallen ill. Fire officials in Hayward, California, near San Francisco, say a gas explosion obliterated a home and started a major fire. 6 people were taken to hospitals. The average rate on a 30-year U.S. mortgage edged higher this week, though it remains relatively near its low point so far this year. The uptick brings the average long-term mortgage rate to 6.22% from 6.19% last week. This is AP News. The Trump administration is linking the seizure of an oil tanker off Venezuela to U.S. anti-drug efforts.
Venezuela calls the seizure of an oil tanker off its coast this week by U.S. forces blatant theft and an act of international piracy. But Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem told a House panel the purpose was
to ensure that we're pushing back on a regime that is systematically covering and flooding our country with deadly drugs and killing our next generation of Americans.
At the White House, Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt added,
"We're not going to stand by and watch sanctioned vessels sail the seas with black market oil."
Their claims that this is about going after drugs or holding people accountable for the drugs is just a bunch of nonsense. It's a cover story.
Senator Chris Van Hollen, Democrat from Maryland.
The real goal here is clearly regime change in Venezuela and accomplishing regime change by force.
Ben Thomas, Washington.
And I'm Marcela Sanchez, AP News.
This is 820 AM, WCPT Willow Springs, and streaming worldwide at WCPT820.com. We are Chicago's progressive talk, where facts matter. Now, your WCPT 820 weather update.
From the Weatherology Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Jennifer Wojcicki. Partial sunshine develops here for today. We'll see a high around 30 degrees. Winds out of the northwest around 5 to 10 miles per hour, gusting as high as 15. Then for tonight, a chance for some flurries with cloudy skies, a low near 8 above. Saturday, a chance for snow showers, cloudy, high of 10 above. Then by Sunday, mostly sunny skies. We'll see a high around 11. Monday, partial sunshine, high of 22. That's your latest Chicago weather update.
Currently, it's 21.
With other language learning apps, I was just playing games. I wasn't really learning. Babbel's different.
Babbel was designed by over 200 language learning experts to be the most effective way to learn another language.
Every time I open the app, I can choose to work on my writing, speaking, or listening. And it saves my mistakes for me to review, so I'm constantly improving. Before Babbel, I thought I just wasn't good with languages. But now I'm speaking French. Tout ça, c'est grâce à Babbel.
Save up to 50% on your Babbel subscription when you sign up at Babbel.com. Babbel.com.
Because facts matter. You're listening to WCPT 820.
He's not here to yell. He's here to inform and maybe stir the pot. This is Chew's Views with Richard Chew.
Yeah, I stirred the pot this morning. My goodness, but that's okay. That we're going to keep moving it forward, guys. If you haven't already, you can follow Heartland Signal on X, Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, and Threads at Heartland Signal. And be sure to check heartlandsignal.com for daily updates. Today on Live, Local, and Progressive, Joan Esposito will be taking your calls for the first half of the show, then talking to Chris Fitzsimmons, host of the Stories from the States podcast, and Brendan Buck, MS Now political analyst, former senior aide to two Republican House speakers and spokesperson for Keep Americans Covered. Live, Local, and Progressive. Weekdays 2 to 5 here on WCPT AM 820, heartlandsignal.com, and tune in. Driving it home tonight, Patty Vasquez will be joined in studio by guest co-host Dan Schaefer, and they will be talking to Michael Sarasso, media director for the South Carolina Democratic Party. Driving it home, Patty Vasquez, weekdays 5 to 7 here on WCPT, Heartland Signal website, tune in, YouTube, and Facebook. Next week on Chew's Views, my guests will include candidate for Michigan Governor Chris Swanson, former CDC Chief Medical Officer Deborah Horry, University of Chicago Professor of Political Science Robert Pape, Congresswoman Robin Kelly, and fifth-generation Illinois soybean farmer John Bartman, plus our regulars, Mike Nellis, Kurt Mullett, and Karen Byrne. Somebody that's become regular with us that wants to teach us stuff and give our brains a little bit of expansion is now, I can comfortably say this, our good friend, Professor Kevin Schultz. Good morning. The author of the book, Why Everybody Hates White Liberals, Including White Liberals. I mean, I forgot where I was, Professor, and I was talking to somebody, and I said, have you read this book? And they looked at me, where was I? They looked at me real strange. Their face just scrunched up like they had just ate a whole bag of sour lemons. And I was like, oh, my God. Where was I? I got to remember. I forgot where I was when I said that. But in any event, Professor Schultz, welcome back to the show. I know we talked a couple weeks ago, and I said, we got to have you back on because you have put together this great program, this research project, and I wanted to talk about it a little bit more in depth. But welcome back to the show. How you been doing? How was Thanksgiving?
Good morning, Richard. Good to be back. Thanksgiving was excellent, as always. You know, it's good just to slow down and take stock and take measure of what we can be thankful for and what the good things are we got going on in our life, and then get a little rest so we can rally to continue the good fight that we're fighting.
That's right. That's right. Well, toward the end of our last visit, you were about to talk about, you mentioned a couple things that you were working on. You said, Richard, let me talk to you about a program that I put together, a research project that I put together, and it's called the Rule of 60. And so at that moment, I said, hey, Doc, we got to have you back on to talk a little bit more about this because it really is something that I believe more people, I think, would appreciate. So let's just get right into it because I know we still have limited time today, but let's get kind of right into this with me asking you this initial question. What is the project about? It's called the Rule of 60, but let me have you tell our listeners what it is, and then let's grab a couple of the subject matters that you've done some research on.
Yeah. Okay. I love it. I love, by the way, that you explained, you described me as somebody who wants to stretch everybody's brains. I love that. That's the biggest compliment anybody's paid.
Well, that's what I believe.
I appreciate that one. And it's funny to hear you talk about somebody listening to the title of my book, Why Everyone Hates White Liberals, Including White Liberals, and getting a scrunched up face. Because some people initially, they see the title and they think it's kind of a hit job on liberals. However, they may choose to define liberals, which is part of what the book tries to explore. And then they get into it, and there's actually a good bit of history that explains what happens to the center of American life, how we ended up so polarized in our country, and why everything, from every major issue that politicians might deal with to somebody's appearance on a dating app where you can click a box and says, I don't want to date a Republican or anything like that. Where does this polarization come from? And so, as you know, because we've talked about it before, that book described this centrist tradition in American life, which used to be called liberalism. And then liberalism came under attack, the title, Why Everyone Hates White Liberals. And the right has successfully pushed that label liberal further to the left. And this has left a big, empty middle. So there's no words that we have to describe the center or even the center left of American politics. So I was going around the country promoting the book like we have to do. We're out on the stump, and we're going to our local venues and our churches and our synagogues and our libraries, and we're telling people about what this book is about. And I detected a couple things. One, the Q&A lasted a long time. So people were really eager to talk about why we're so polarized. They're frustrated by the fact that we're polarized. A lot of people felt that the Democratic Party was particularly inept at pushing back against what seems like a Republican effort to further polarize the country. And so they said, what happened to the center? And so I did a little bit of exploration, and this led to that project that you were talking about, the Rule of 60. And it's still in its inception. But what I discovered is that the center still exists. If you look a little bit deeper into every single issue, you'll find a center of American politics, but you won't necessarily find that center represented by either political party, or if it might be. It's not necessarily true in that way. So there is this center. So if you ask a very specific question, you wanted to get into an issue. Let's start with one just because I think it might do a good job sort of explaining this. If you get into any issue, what you'll find is that about 60% of Americans, this is why it's called the Rule of 60, actually agree on some of the details or the specifics of the issue. And then you'll get some partisan people on the right and some partisan people on the left. And this is what social scientists and everyday imaginary listeners can think of as a bell curve, where you've got a small number of percentage of people on sort of the left side of the bell, and then it pops up in the middle to above 60%. That's why it's called the Rule of 60. And then it goes back down to the right. So where there's another small, 10, 15% of the people who believe certain ways on an issue. So I started telling audiences about some of this stuff when I was doing my book talk, and somebody said, you got to get this information out there. So my kids, I got 5 kids, and they said, Dad, you have to get on social media. This is how you're going to sell more books. And I'm not a native to that environment at all. and Richard, I saw that you just recently started following me on Instagram and on the Rule of 60. So you'll agree that I'm not a native on this thing. But I thought, what a neat way to develop a hypothesis. What a neat way to work through some of your ideas. So I started this. It's on TikTok under Professor Schultz, and on Instagram as Rule of 60. And I'm going through the alphabet on every issue that I can come up with in American life. A was for abortion. B was for about how Americans feel about black people. And I was looking through polling data and trying to figure out, how do Americans actually feel on these issues? And what I discovered was really interesting. It was basically that if you ask people a partisan question, you'll get a polarized 50-50 split, or 45-55, something that's pretty evenly divided, a split. But then if you start asking them specifics about each issue, you'll get much more nuance and much more general agreement. I'm still in the middle of working through this, but this is what I'm finding so far.
So, and thank you for that. Let me do some business. You're listening to Choose Views on WCPT AM 820 in Chicago and WARR 1520 AM and 103.5 FM from Warren County, North Carolina. I'm Richard Chu. We're talking to Professor Kevin Schultz about the Rule of 60. So let's do what you just said. Let's take an issue that is hugely opinionated and divisive and all the rest. Let's start with abortion. And so let's get into that as it relates to the nuance, because we know that folks are going to be like, hey, hold on. First of all, we're not talking about it. But then we go down the path of when we do talk about it, it's interesting where that goes. So what have been some of your findings if we start with that very polarizing, to your definition, topic?
Yeah. Okay. And we got to talk about these things, right? We got to have these conversations. We got to remember our civility, and we got to be comfortable, allowing people to make minor mistakes and stuff like that. So let's talk about abortion. It's sort of a taboo subject, as you mentioned. And if you ask people if they're pro-life or pro-choice, which are very politicized terms, you get about a 50-50 split. It's actually about 55-45 split all the way down. But then if you start getting into the data, it's much more complicated than that. So, for instance, only 13% of Americans believe abortion should be illegal in all circumstances. So if you think of the wave of all these abortion laws after the striking down of Roe v. Wade, that's representing only 13% of Americans. On the other hand, on the other side, 30% of Americans believe abortion should be legal under any circumstances at all times. So these are your sort of extremes. You've got 13% of Americans who say abortion should be illegal all the time, and 30% of Americans believe abortion should be legal all the time. But in the middle of this, you have a whopping 55 to about 60%. Currently it's 55. It has been a little bit higher over time. 55% of Americans who say that abortion should be legal under certain circumstances, and usually that means within the first trimester or later afterwards if the health of the baby or the mother is at stake. So if you look at this, it falls like a bell curve where you've got only 13% of Americans who say it should be illegal on the far right, and then you've got 55% of Americans who think it should be legal under certain circumstances, and 30% of Americans who say it should be legal all the time. That means, actually, if you ask if somebody's pro-life or pro-choice based on our political terms, it's a whopping 85% of Americans who say abortion should be legal at least some of the time. But then if you ask them this politicized question, are you pro-life or pro-choice, you end up with a 51 to 43 split.
Is it so that question there, are you pro-life or are you pro-choice? That question tends to put itself in the box of abortion or not. I look at it more broadly, and I look at it more broadly in terms of what is life. When people say they're pro-life, well, what does that mean? And so that to me is where we get into sort of the nuanced additional questions, because did someone assume that I'm talking about abortion when I say pro-life or pro-choice? I may not be. I could be talking about gun violence, or on and on. I could be talking about euthanasia. And so this is where I think a lot of times, and you as a professor can help us define this, we make assumptions about what people are thinking about a topic, because in some ways we've been socialized to think a certain way because of labeling. Does that make any sense, what I just said, Professor?
Yeah, I mean, and there's good reasons for this. Our brains are only so big, and we can only contain so much information, and we need to communicate with each other in sort of quick ways a lot of the times. So labels are actually, very human things and very useful a lot of the times, especially if we have to communicate quickly. And one of the things that we've seen with our politics, and one of the theses that I'm working through as I develop this rule of 60, is that political actors, for a long time, of course, but especially with the advent of social media and the 24-hour news cycles, have relied more heavily on labeling quick things, coming up with snappy marketing plans, and then that becomes a shortcut for a major issue that has lots and lots of complexity. So I think you're absolutely right. And, the Catholic Church, our Chicago's Pope has just made this exact argument that if you're going to be pro-life, you have to it embodies a whole bunch of things, continuing SNAP benefits, for instance, and improving pre-K and kindergarten education, things like that. There's lots of ways that you can be pro-life such that it is. But in our political world today, that has become sort of a shortcut for signifying that you are anti-abortion, and almost exclusively anti-abortion at all costs.
Yeah, and so at all costs, that 13%, when you were talking about that, where my brain went was that 13%'s feeling, definition, belief impacted the other 87%, but more importantly, it impacted the lives of everybody, whether they're pro-life or pro-choice. Everybody then had to be under the guise of this is what we're going to make happen, and so it makes it even more complex because now people who should have a right to make a determination about themselves, that was eliminated because of what 13% of the measured population decided that was right for everybody else. It's crazy on that issue.
Yeah, it's remarkable, right? It's kind of crazy.
And so, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, and that's why I say sort of some of I don't want to pat myself on the back. I'm not going to do that. But that's why I sort of think this project that I'm working on is so important.
Why?
Because it clarifies.
It made the hair on the back of my neck jump up when you started talking about it last time. Because I apologize. I interrupted you and said, we got to have you back on again to talk about this because and so I'm with you. Listen, we're going to ride this. We're going to ride this wagon until the wheels fall off because it's important that we listen. I said this. I've been saying this for a long time, Professor, and I said it last week before I left, and I've said it at the beginning of this week. We have to have these conversations during right before Thanksgiving or right around Thanksgiving. I had lunch with some friends. We talked about politics a third of the conversation, like never before. I said this before you came on. Family, and so part of what we've lost in losing space as progressive liberal Democrats and all the rest that we do to label ourselves is having conversations that will allow us to actually strengthen ourselves because we're talking about the stuff that is going to make us better. So that's why this, I get so excited about this because I think this kind of research on your part helps us cut through some of the things that people are afraid to talk about. Religion is another one, we can get into. But I want to ask you about this. One other of the pieces that I saw on the Rule of 60. I want to ask you about this as we wrap up today. Let's talk about one of the questions that you put out there, and I don't know which letter of the alphabet this one is, but do Americans trust mainstream media? I don't know what letter you used or where you are. But
that was M.
So it's M.
Media.
Okay, for media. All right. So help us out here. Drop us into the deep end of the pool.
All right, so we are currently consumed with the writings of a president who constantly complains everything is fake news or the mainstream media lies. It's controlled by Democratic opposition, and this is sort of the mainstream center of our information gathering in some ways. And then on the opposite side, of course, you have outlets like Fox News and more right leaning that are definitely sort of working on behalf of the voice of the president. Interestingly, this used to be sort of a left-wing complaint. A lot of our listeners will know Noam Chomsky's book from 1988 called Manufacturing Consent, which suggests that all these corporations actually run the media, and so they're just going to put out a sort of corporate stance on whatever that constitutes the news. And so if you look at sort of some glossy polls, they do say there's huge decline in the term in mass media. However, if you look at actually breaking down the polls on looking at specific media outlets like BBC, PBS, Wall Street Journal, New York Times, you will see that actually large numbers of Americans actually trust in certain outlets of the mainstream media. They trust local governments, local outlets, so your local newspaper, your city paper, something like that, or your city newscast, more than they trust the national stuff because we've been sort of programmed to trust the national news a little bit less. And this is on a decline about trusting the mainstream media. But trust in national news actually holds just above 60%. Although it's interesting, in 2016 and in 2024, it actually dips below that 60%. That's the only 2 times it does. And that's, of course, both times when Donald Trump was running for president quite successfully. So whenever he runs for president, trust in mainstream media goes down. But when he's either already elected or when he's not president, trust in mainstream media goes up. So there actually is a little bit more trust in mainstream media than we are led to believe. And it's interesting that Americans have more trust in their local news outlets than they do in the national news outlets. But again, if you go down item by item, the BBC or the New York Times, there's a significant amount of trust. And then below that, if you go to sort of some of the left-leaning news outlets like MSNBC, then there's still some trust, but not as much trust. And then, of course, at the bottom of the barrels, if you go to the right-leaning stuff, it ends with the National Enquirer, which I'm not sure if that's left or right or just fantasy land. But that's the least trusted news source. But if you go to Fox News and OANN and stuff like that, that is some of the least trusted news sources.
Well, and then to that end, there's evidence. Obviously, the case with Fox, where they had to pay $785 million, that would say that was determined based on misinformation or something that wasn't trusted. And so we can see that there's evidence to say that their trust decreased because of their deeds. That being said, sometimes I deal with certain things or try to address certain things or ask myself questions based on the visceral reaction I have to something. It's a starting point for me. It doesn't necessarily be the course I take or where I end up, but the visceral says to me you should pay attention. It's kind of like you say, maybe I shouldn't drive down that street today. Or maybe I should take my foot off the accelerator because it looks like it might be slippery up there. That sort of maybe. And so my visceral reaction to when you said the leading sources, BBC and others, is that when I'm really frustrated with what corporate media is doing, I do turn to some of those sources. I honestly, that was the visceral reaction. I have gone to the BBC. I have gone to other outside of America programming to get information. Is that weird, or do you see that there's other, evidence is maybe not the right word, but other data that supports some of that?
Yeah, I think a lot of Americans are increasingly doing that. They're going to The Guardian, the BBC. A lot of times we turn to the English language newspapers just because most of us speak English. So that tends to be the default that a lot of us go to. And one of the things, so look, another class that I teach and is called How to Argue Politics in America and Stay Friends. And
that's one of those weed smoking classes, right?
Yeah. Not if you want to get involved, because I basically lay down the ground rules on day one, and then we go issue through issue, and we actually argue politics with each other. And so two of the lessons might be relevant to what you just said. The first is you got to have multiple sources and you got to use critical thinking skills. So if you just get all your information from one source, even if it's the New York Times as opposed to TikTok, you've got to also click on the Wall Street Journal or the BBC or the Guardian or something else just to sort of triangulate and see, especially if you're going to engage in an argument about something. You should at least know your stuff. And the second thing that I teach all of my students is that when you go into an argument, and Richard, this goes to what you were talking about earlier about how we shouldn't be afraid to engage on these sort of hot button issues like abortion or racism or things like that. But you have to take what I call a teacher-student perspective, which means you have to be able to teach the person, whether it's your uncle at Thanksgiving or whatever, why your argument is right. So you got to have facts. You got to know what you're talking about. And then you have to sit back and be a student and let him, talking about your uncle, try and teach you why his position is right. And then you might actually learn something, or you might actually teach something. You're not always going to agree, but if you have that teacher-student perspective, you're not going to end up, throwing wine at each other at the dinner table or something like that.
And if you do throw wine at each other, it's for comedy rather than for the anger that can come out of that conversation. Listen, what you just said, those last few statements are so powerful in terms of teacher and student, because we've got to give ourselves the space to be able to do that as best possible. It isn't always going to be perfect, but it definitely is something that we can be aspirational about. Professor Kevin Schultz, thank you so much, and I'm glad that you had the courage to say, "Hey, Richard, I'm working on this thing," and I was excited enough to say we've got to get you back on to talk about it, because in addition to this wonderful book that you've written that is entitled "Why Everybody Hates White Liberals, Including White Liberals," there's so much other great work that you're putting out there for all of us to take advantage of. So I severely I'm so thankful for your work and your guidance and participation in our show and trying to do the thing of education and educating folks that listen to what we do here. So thank you, Professor Schultz.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and thanks for engaging your readers. One final thought on the Rule of 60. A of all, if you do look it up, to the listeners out there, please forgive me for my lack of social media savvy. I'm doing the best I can. And secondly, there's a lesson there for some of the Democratic politicians who might be listening, which means Democrats should not be afraid to jump on some of these issues, because it turns out they're wildly popular. So it just becomes a matter of articulating them clearly, because there is this big center of American politics that wants somebody to stand up and fight for these things that more than 60% of Americans believe.
Yeah, I mean, that's so true. Listen, Professor, we're going to, obviously we're going to talk again in the next couple of weeks. We'll figure the dates out like we've been doing on our every month session, but looking forward to having you back again. Thank you for taking the time. And all I can say is we wish you a wonderful, safe holiday season. And once we get into January, we'll be back together again to talk about this and so many other important topics. We appreciate you, Kevin Schultz.
Thanks for having me, and happy holidays to everybody out there, whatever you celebrate.
That's right. Talk to you soon. Be well. Be safe. All right.
Okay.
Bye-bye. Quick break, guys. 773-763-9278. You're listening to Choose Views on WCPT, AM 820 in Chicago, and WARR 1520 AM and 103.5 FM from Warren County, North Carolina. I'm Richard Chu. We'll be right back.
Hey Chicago, Joe Fontana here, founder of Fry the Coop. At Fry the Coop, we serve the best chicken sandwiches in the world. And no, that's not an opinion, that's a fact my taste buds personally signed off on. At Fry the Coop, we hand bread every single piece of chicken, double fry it in 100% beef tallow, and we hit it with our secret Fry the Coop spice rub like it owes us money. The result? A Fry the Coop sandwich so crunchy, juicy, spicy, sweet, salty, and savory, it feels illegal. Fry the Coop has a one-of-a-kind sandwich that makes your taste buds high-five each other. Don't like it? No problem. We guarantee happiness or your money back. But don't worry, you're not going to need it. We now have 10 Fry the Coop locations around the Chicagoland area. So no matter where you're at, there's a good chance there's a Fry the Coop 15 minutes away. And we're a local Chicago company, born and bred, for the people, by the people. So come down and support your local boys and get the best chicken sandwich in the world. Right here in Chicago, right here at Fry the Coop.
The guru of gutter protection himself, Chris Cunahan, president of Leaf Filter, is here to take your most pressing leaf-related questions.
Hey, everybody, Chris here. I understand we have Ron on the line. Ron, where are you calling from?
Uh-oh. Ron, are you calling from a ladder?
Well, I was. I wanted to ask Chris what I need to do to get my gutters ready to have Leaf Filter installed.
Oh, Ron, you don't have to do anything. A Leaf Filter Trusted Pro will come out and clean out your gutters, realign and seal your gutters, and install Leaf Filter, America's #1 gutter protection system.
So I didn't need to get on this ladder?
Ron, Leaf Filter Trusted Pros are in your neighborhood and ready to help. Just visit leaffilter.com/deal to schedule your free gutter inspection and get up to 30% off.
Thank goodness. What was that site?
To get this special radio offer, go to leaffilter.com/deal for your free gutter inspection today and get up to 30% off. That's leaffilter.com/deal for up to 30% off. leaffilter.com/deal. See representative for warranty details.
You're listening to WCPT 820. Here's the latest Chicago weather update.
From the Weatherology Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Jennifer Wojcicki. Partial sunshine develops here for today. We'll see a high around 30 degrees. Winds out of the northwest around 5 to 10 miles per hour, gusting as high as 15. Then for tonight, a chance for some flurries with cloudy skies, a low near 8 above. Saturday, a chance for snow showers, cloudy, high 10 above. Then by Sunday, mostly sunny skies. We'll see a high around 11. Monday, partial sunshine, high of 22. That's your latest Chicago weather update.
Currently, it's 23.
Hey Google, play WCPT.
Streaming Chicago's progressive talk from TuneIn.
Richard Chu's got his eyes on the truth, and you're right where you need to be. This is Chu's Views.
So here is 2 screenshots from the big contest. So at the top is at 8:29, and at the bottom is 8:32. So 3 minutes later. So this is in Michigan, Harris and Trump, and you have to watch because they get flipped between the 2 screenshots. So in this one, these are the numbers at 8:29 p.m. and it says 34% reporting. So down here, it says 37% reporting. All I did was make the letters bigger so you can see it. So 3% more votes have come in, and here's the difference in totals. So Trump got 50,000 more, and somehow Harris lost 34,000. Now, maybe I'm confused about the whole process, but I thought the votes were supposed to go up. How are they going down? This makes no sense. So there's a lot more screenshots. This is just one example from Michigan.
Okay, so I've never been a conspiracy. I shouldn't say that. That's not true. I just said to somebody the other day, I'm this conspiracy guy. But I am one to believe that there can be some stuff in the game. Let's put it that way. I'll break it down that way. With us this morning is the Executive Director, Public Engagement for Election Truth Alliance, Nathan Taylor. And he kind of thinks that there's some stuff in the game every now and again. Nathan, good morning and welcome to Chu's Views on WCPT.
Good morning. Thank you very much for having me.
I probably threw you off with that clip, but I wanted that to be out there to talk to, as sort of as an on-ramp to what your organization does and tries to peel apart when it comes to elections and legal actions to be taken and accuracy and honesty in our elections on a national level and everything else. Talk a little bit about Election Truth Alliance. Talk a little bit about your work and obviously the clip I played and what's meaningful there.
Yeah, and I'm familiar with that clip just by audio alone. I believe it's either an Instagram or a TikTok clip where the gentleman is kind of talking through a screenshot showing some discrepancies on election night. Then that is what the ETA's work has been focused around. The ETA, the Election Truth Alliance, is a nonpartisan nonprofit that founded just after the 24 election. It's composed of volunteers with various backgrounds. We got data scientists, statisticians, cybersecurity experts such as myself. And pretty much we came together to start looking at our elections because there were so many problems with the 24 election that we felt never got investigated. So my background specifically, my name is Nathan Taylor. As you said, I'm one of the 3 executive directors of the Election Truth Alliance. I have a background in cybersecurity. I was a 25 Bravo computer tech specialist with the U.S. Army. I've worked in the cybersecurity field. I've worked for companies that have provided security for banks. I've been a network administrator, and done a little bit of this and a little bit of that. So, to kind of summarize our concerns, the ETA has been applying some well-known election forensics, looking at our voting data for the 24 election. We've been looking at recent voting data for the Tennessee special election. And we've been putting out reports, and we've actually been investigating on the ground in these places where we're finding problems. We have a lawsuit that we've actually recently filed in Pennsylvania, and I could talk a little bit about that. But generally speaking, our concern is simple. We are very concerned as we've started investigating and looking into the systems we're using to run our elections, the way we're actually auditing and checking the results of our elections. We've raised red flags time and time again that we feel like our tests are not sufficient and the problems we're finding aren't getting investigated. And we are concerned that if you could compromise the voting systems we use, which at this point you may have seen in the news recently, one of the largest voting brands in the U.S. was recently purchased, and that is now called Liberty Votes. But yeah, we're concerned that if you could compromise those systems, could you change the outcome of elections? And will we catch it? And if it's happening, is it going to keep happening? And is it a concern for the midterms? And that's what the ETA has been focused on. We've put out over 7 different reports at this point, looking at swing states, looking at voting behavior there. And pretty much we've raised red flags that it doesn't look like the voting behavior for the 24 election and for some of these recent elections looks normal, looks human. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go forward here.
So talk about Liberty Vote and where they are in this conversation, because I, being the nerd I am with information, and I'm a dog with the bone with certain things. Yeah, but tell our listeners a little bit more about this organization and what the implications of them could be.
Yeah, so currently in the U.S., nearly, I believe, 70% of the U.S.'s voting infrastructure, these are the machines that count our votes, the databases that host those votes, even some of the poll books. There's really only 2 or 3 major brands we're using, especially in the swing states. And so these top 2 brands currently is ES&S and Dominion, which has now been purchased out and relabeled as Liberty Vote. And the reason why this has been a concern is a part of our investigations has been looking into who owns these companies, what are their practices, and are there any red flags or concerns? And what we're finding is we have proprietary voting systems. We have companies that own our voting systems, and they don't really tell us a lot about what's going on behind the curtain, if you will. And one of the flags that's come up with Liberty Vote is there does seem to be some potential partisan connection with who now owns that voting system, which spans some of the swing states. I know, for example, the top voting brand is used in Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Florida, even Wisconsin, Michigan. And we've pretty much said we don't actually know, as my background, cybersecurity information systems, we are concerned that these systems may not be transparent enough. They're not open source. They're not audited publicly. They're audited by a very select, approved company or 2. And as we've dug in deeper, the concern is very much if you could get into these systems maliciously using malware or a third party, could you do damage? Could you change the results of elections? And would we even catch it? And that's the problem we keep raising as we go into the midterms. And in some of our lawsuits actually talk about these systems, talk about some of the weirdness around what happened during the 24 election. And yeah.
So I think about this not getting caught part as, I love to hike and I love the outdoors and so forth. And I remember thinking, I've had this thought over the years, like if you wanted to go down a trail and not be followed, as you were going down the trail, you'd have a broom behind you to sweep and cover your tracks. Real time. You know where you're headed, but those who would follow you wouldn't be able to find you because you swept your tracks away along the way. And that seems to be what a lot of people who are asking the question, were there some shenanigans in the 2024 general election? But many people are saying, if there were, how are we going to find it? Because they, quote, covered their tracks. What say you in that space, Nathan?
Yeah, that's an excellent analogy. That is the concern. If you could compromise these voting systems, one thing people don't realize is in the U.S., nearly 100% of the votes are counted by computers, even hand-marked paper ballots. They're all fed into scanners. Your mail-in is fed into scanners. If you're in a place that does vote with digital voting machines, it's counted by a computer as well. So people don't realize we're not actually hand-counting our votes in the U.S. Canada does, for example. So, yeah, if you could compromise and, say, put malware on these voting systems to change votes around or add in votes, it would be very difficult to catch that because, as you mentioned, any software or malware would probably be undetectable, like after the fact. You're not going to find it on the machines. It'll delete itself and probably clear up any logs on the way out. But, and here's what's interesting, is we still have paper trails in the U.S. We still have those original ballots that were counted. And one of the things the ETA has been pursuing is we retained those ballots for 22 months after the election. We still have almost a year, a little less than a year now, before those ballots are allowed to be destroyed. And one of the things that we're pursuing in our recent lawsuit in Pennsylvania, and where we're working in Florida and other places to do the same, is we are trying to audit those original paper ballots in the places where our findings have brought up these red flags. And some of the concerns we have made public as we've gone forward is, for example, in Pennsylvania, I think at least 32 counties, or half the counties in Pennsylvania on election night, had issues with their voting machines. They stopped working, they stopped counting. And one of those counties we actually talk about in our lawsuit in Pennsylvania, where all of their voting machines on election day stopped counting ballots. They said it was an issue with all of them. All of them stopped counting ballots. And they couldn't get any of the ballots counted for half of the day. They said it was an issue with the way the ballots were scanned, but nonetheless, the machines couldn't count them. And they had to hand duplicate the ballots. And then later in the day, they got a new type of ballot and was able to scan them through the machines. And in our lawsuit, we highlight the discrepancies that whole process caused, because they said that they had to hand duplicate more ballots than we have votes counted at the end of the day. You know, we had reports saying, they hand duplicated up to 65,000 ballots in this county. And then we're only getting maybe 55,000 votes. So there's problems like this that we're finding as we keep digging. Yes, as you said, or you put up, at the beginning of this conversation, there's been online news reports on election night showing as the totals are coming in, and then 6 or 7 o'clock, those numbers are switching or changing, or you're actually getting more votes for one candidate, and they go back and they lose votes.
Yeah, this
is a real problem.
That part is what really got me, and that's I'm going to use the word impossible, but maybe improbable is maybe a better word in your space. But that, to me, I remember thinking that's damn near impossible for you to lose votes, because it's an aggregate process. You could stall, but to lose votes, I've never in my almost 64 years, of which, I've been voting for all the years that I can, ever in any election anywhere in the United States heard of that before, that you lose numbers. You stall, and the other, candidates may pass you, but that one's just always stuck with me, that doesn't make any sense. So the question that I have, Nathan, and I look forward to having you back, because this next 11 months of our lives is going to be critically important. And you say, we respect the nonpartisan part of where you are, but you're one of those guys that I can tell this, right is right and wrong is wrong, and messing with stuff is wrong. And so those are Richard's words for you to say that in this next 11 months, we got to get it right. And I just, I needed to say it that way out of respect to you and what you're trying to uncover. Talk about two things real quickly, if you can. And I know you may have some comments about what I said about the stalling versus the going backward. Talk about Tennessee, because a lot of people said that there was some hinkiness in this most recent special election with Afton Bain. But I'll shut up and let you take the mic on that.
Yeah. No, you brought up an excellent point, which is what we're trying to hammer home, is our elections, voting shouldn't be, counting our votes isn't a partisan thing, right? And, every American should know when we cast our vote, it's being counted correctly. It doesn't matter who you vote for. It doesn't matter how you vote. It's an American, right. And we're really frustrated because as we've done this, and as you said, right, we're getting ready for the midterms. We're frustrated where people are like, oh, well, it doesn't matter because it already happened. And it's very much a concern where if you could have messed with things in the 24 election, every American should care. You shouldn't be afraid of counting and auditing. That's a normal practice in elections. Canada does it. They have multiple audits when they run through their voting process. But you bring up Tennessee, and this is what's important as we've gone forward, is we've said, yeah, the 24 election has some serious concerns. We are concerned about the systems being compromised. But could it happen again? And will it happen again if we don't investigate and we don't do something about it? And as you mentioned, a recent special election in Tennessee. I believe it was Congressional District 7. Afton, I'm really bad with last names.
Afton Bain.
I think it was
That's okay. I got you.
Bain. Yeah. And yes, the ET actually did a preliminary analysis on the results of that election. We have currently put out one county, which is Montgomery County, generally like the second more populated county in that race. And what we're finding, to kind of summarize, is one of the methods we're using is election forensics, where we look at every precinct in a county. We use the voting data the state gives us, or the county gives us in this case. And we look at how did voters vote across the entire county. Every precinct in the county, I believe they had, 30-plus precincts we could look at. And we've done this method to Pennsylvania, to North Carolina, to Florida, and then, Tennessee recently, and Michigan as well. We'll be putting out a report for Montana, and then we'll be putting out a report for Michigan and Wisconsin. And what our analysis shows, and this analysis is based on experts that have done this method to Russian elections, Bolivian elections, and they pretty much found election fraud when they do this methodology. And it's in public news and peer-reviewed papers. And pretty much what it does is it looks at how does every vote and how does every precinct vote in an election, and is there any patterns? Is there anything that doesn't look like normal human voting behavior? Normal human voting behavior is chaotic. People don't really know, and they can't coordinate across the county. Like, you're not going to vote in lockstep. Some precincts are going to go one way, some precincts are going to go the other. But what we're finding is, and we did this, as I said, for Montgomery County, and we'll be doing this for Davidson County as well, which is one of the largest counties in that race in Tennessee. And what we're finding is it does look like, if it is vote manipulation, which we're concerned of, it does look like the voting behavior in that race has raised red flags for almost being algorithmic, almost being like a computer allocating votes to precincts. And we can see it pretty clearly. It creates a really interesting effect. It creates a cross where in precincts where more votes were cast or where there was higher turnout, more and more of the votes are going to, in this case, Republican candidates. And it's the same effect we saw in the 24 election. It's the same effect we saw in recent special elections in Florida. It looks almost identical, and it does not look like human voting behavior. It's especially, based on those methods we talk about, it doesn't match what a free and fair election should look like. And we've been screaming, from the rooftops about, hey, we need to investigate. Hey, we need to hand count. And here's the thing that people don't realize about Tennessee. Tennessee law doesn't allow an audit. There is no automatic audit after the results of this election. If there's no contest, if the candidates running don't want to pursue hand counting, there won't be hand counting of the of this recent Tennessee election.
Wow! And state by and each state has a different, methodology, rules, guidelines, and so forth. But this is the thing. Yeah. Again, this is one of those days where I'm thankful and blessed to have well-informed people. Our guest Karen Byrne was on earlier. You, Nathan Taylor, and of course Professor Kevin Schultz is with us. That dig into the data, dig into the information, so that we can then come back and say, not only this common sense rule and say that just doesn't make any sense, but the data backs up that conversation. So I want to ask you something as we wrap up, and also know that I'm going to ask you to be back on with us when we get into 2026, because we're going to be in the midst of the midterm season. But when you talk about that algorithm, what popped into my brain was momentum. And see, tell me if there's a way you can sort of pull out what I'm trying to ask, which is this. If that is happening, then it's almost like throwing more logs on an already burning fire. It just picks up steam, momentum, when there is an algorithm that's recognizing that a trend is happening. So if there's a trend that's being pushed by the algorithm is happening, then the algorithm keeps feeding on itself to increase the speed of the trend. Does that make sense, what I'm asking?
Yeah, I see what you're going for, and I'll say this. This is what our analysis has been telling us, is what the data says. We're definitely seeing that if this is an algorithm, as you said, right, a computer deciding where to allocate the votes or to where to change votes, we are definitely seeing that in places of higher turnout, counties of higher turnout, precincts of higher turnout, that is where the most anomalies are occurring, which means if this is vote manipulation, if you're taking votes from one candidate and giving them to the other, the more votes that are being cast in some of these precincts, that is where it begins, as you said, to get stronger. And that is exactly what our analysis is showing. It's actually showing this, and this is what people, anyone who's kind of looking at the results like this doesn't make any sense. What we're actually seeing is that at low turnout, the Democrats are getting a majority of the votes. But what happens is in places of higher turnout, in precincts of higher turnout, where more votes were cast, more voters showed up, that is when the Republicans start to get more and more of the votes. And then at 60% turnout in the 24 election, precincts of higher than like 60%, for example, that is when the Republicans begin to handily win. And in Tennessee, it's actually much, much lower if it is manipulation. The threshold's like 25% turnout. And it's a serious red flag because people are like, oh, well, why is it that in places where there are more voters, the Republicans are doing so well?
Yeah.
We documented this effect in Philadelphia, in Pennsylvania, one of the bluest places in the state. And it's like, why is it in the places where you would expect the Democrats to have a stronghold, they are, in fact, getting beaten, and it's following this pattern. And I want to say one more thing, which is people say, well, our systems aren't connected to the Internet. I have met with multiple staff of Secretary of State across the U.S. We've met, I think, with 2 or 3 different staff as we presented our findings and pushed for investigations. And they all say, well, our systems aren't connected to the Internet. Our voting systems aren't connected. That is, and I'll be honest, as we've furthered our investigations, we're finding that the largest brand in the U.S. has potentially cellular modems in the scanners that count our hand-marked paper ballots. So you're telling me they're not connected to the Internet, and yet you're digitally uploading the results on election night using, cellular networks. It blows my mind, the level of, oh, well, our systems are secure. Well, one, they're connected cellular, or if they're not, it doesn't matter. You can still put, malware on these systems. This is a big race. This is a big opportunity. If you could cheat elections, it is the greatest heist in American history, right? It's the goal is pretty big, and the reward is amazing.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't put it past people.
Wow. Nathan, thank you so much for taking time to be with us this morning. I know that a lot of our listeners, I'm just getting mad text messages about this right now. But I'm going to, 2 things. One, let people know how they can find you and be more aware of what you're doing. And secondly, in the new year, we definitely will have you back and talk about this and what people should be looking out for. Because I want to approach this from, let's find some solutions or on-the-ground things that everyday people can be doing or be aware of. So let folks know real quickly how they can find you.
Yeah. So we have a website up currently. It's electiontruthalliance.org. We've got social media as well, but you can go find us on our website if you want to volunteer. We've got a volunteer form you can fill out. We're also crowdsourced, crowdfunded, so people, we're all grassroots. So everything we've raised to fight this fight and do these investigations is small donations from Americans. So, and the midterms are going to be huge. We'll have some new stuff come up as we keep pushing. We're working with other election integrity organizations to come up with game plans on how we can get ahead of things, how we can prepare. Because if this can happen again, if it's still happening, and the midterms is a perfect opportunity for it to happen, and we can't let it go undetected.
Without a doubt. Nathan Taylor, thanks for being with us, man. Have a great weekend. We appreciate your hard work, and we will have you back sooner than later, okay?
Thank you so much. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays, man. Be safe. Bye-bye. All right, guys, I'm going to wrap up real quickly. Thanks to all of you. Jim, let me just run through this as quick as I can. 331. Who else we got out here? Greg, Nancy. Oh, wow. David, everybody that sent texts in. We appreciate you keeping us posted and helping us understand. Granny T, Al, all of you. Man, just great. What can I say, guys? Stay tuned for the Stephanie Miller Show. And remember, take a deep breath and make your life count. We'll see you next week.
When it comes to the vitamins and supplements you take, quality counts. If you have questions or concerns about the vitamins you plan on taking, we're happy to help. Mark Drugs, better health and care for you and your pets. The most common signs you need a probiotic: